Hey everyone, it's Dr. Mike here. Let's talk a little bit about these other two chapters this week. I'm a little busy this week, so I'm getting these made for the first time. Also, as you might not know, but Cummings and Worley came out with a new edition of the book, which is requiring a lot of work on my part to sort of redesign the PowerPoint presentations and add audio to them and so on. So that's why they're a little bit late this week. Chapter 2, the nature of planned change. So when things change, they can change in a really big way, of course. Here are the learning objectives. Take a look at those. Critique the practicee. I guess that's supposed to be practice of plan change. So Kurt Lewin came up with this idea that we unfreeze an organization. In other words, we let people know, hey, there's a big change coming. American Airlines was just taken over by U.S. Airways. Big changes. When any kind of a merger or an acquisition or a downsizing is going to happen, the idea is you have to let the employees know and you unfreeze them. You kind of get them ready. When we elect a new president in the United States, that first 100 days of the new presidency, a new person in office, it's like the United States, the citizens are going, okay, we're ready, what's going to happen? And that's called unfreezing. And then there's some kind of a change, whatever that change could be. In a company, it could be new technology. In a nation, of course, it can be a new president, new administration. And then the idea is that we sort of refreeze the organization to ensure that the change becomes permanent. That theory is okay. The dilemma is things are changing so fast right now. I don't know that anything unfreezes and refreezes. I think it probably stays a little mushy. For the OD practitioner, the action research cycle, very, very basic. I mentioned this a little bit in my first audio. The first thing we do in about the 11 o'clock position up there is identify a problem. Then we go in and we gather data. We try to make sense of what we found. We act on whatever it is that we found. We evaluate the results. We determine if next steps are necessary or not. And back we are to identifying a problem again if necessary. That's called the action research cycle. You can imagine if you had any kind of problem at your organization, let's say one department or one unit or one group wasn't performing well. They were just not doing well, however that's measured by money or some kind of performance. Then you would start by going, well, let's identify the problem. Well, we can't diagnose something that we don't understand, so we go in and we gather data, and we can gather that quantitatively or qualitatively. We make sense of it, we act on it, we evaluate it, and then we start all over again. Another model is called the positive model, and the positive model simply means that we stay positive, that we look at an organization not as something's wrong with it. We look at the organization as something that's very right. We've done good things here. What more good things can we do? So we initiate the inquiry. We inquire into the best practices. That's the things that we do well. Instead of saying, well, we're broken and we're not doing very good, we come in, which is what action research is about. We come in with a positive model and we say, well, let's inquire into the best practices, discover the themes. And themes means of all the things that we're doing and the things that we want to do, what, when we talk about it, are the themes that emerge. And that's in discussions. We collect that data. And then with that, we use to prefer or envision a preferred future. What do we, given that we're good at what we're doing now, what do we want to do better? And where do we want to go? How do we want to look in the future? And then we design and deliver those ways to create that future, which brings us back to inquiring into the best practices again as time goes by. It's called appreciative inquiry. And here's the model. You can see we start with a topic. We've become, American Airlines is now U.S. Airways, but it's U.S. Airways is using the American Airlines name. It's very interesting. So let's say that's the topic. We'd have to discover what were we good at, both of us as airlines. What's our new destiny? What's the dream that we have for ourselves? And how do we want to design that? So the idea with appreciative inquiry is that it remains appreciative. And we're always focusing on what's good about the organization. A couple of slides here compare planned change models. So we have some similarities and some differences. You can take a look at those. That is, in some ways, all of the change models are similar. There's some change that's preceded by some kind of a diagnosis or some kind of data gathering. All change models apply behavioral science knowledge. They all stress the involvement of organization members. It's not something that can be done alone. And and they all recognize that you need a consultant, a typical OD consultant. But of those plan change models we looked at, a couple of them can be different. Very general versus specific kinds of activities. You'll see when we get into understanding more and more about what plan change is. The centrality of the consultant role, in some ways, in the action research model, the consultant is very, very present and very much a part of the data gathering process and so on. But in the appreciative inquiry model, the consultant is hardly ever around. When I've done a couple of appreciative inquiry sessions with organizations, it's really interesting, because once they get going, the consultant kind of gets out of the way and it runs itself. Problem solving is action research. Social constructionism means that we're going to get together as an organization or a department, and we are going to construct and make sense of the reality that we're experiencing and the reality that we want. So we're not there to solve a problem as much as we are to construct the new future that we want for ourselves. So the general model of plan change is that you, as the consultant, you enter, you contract, you gather some kind of information through diagnosis, you plan and implement some kind of a change. That change effort could be appreciative inquiry, it could be action research, it could be a number of other things. But you go in, you develop and deliver interventions, and then the last thing is you evaluate and institutionalize the change. You make it stick, which takes you back, if it doesn't work, takes you back to any one of the three phases before that. Different types of plan change, well, they vary, because sometimes of the magnitude of the change can make it a different type. An incremental change will be something a little tiny, like we've got a new vice president of human resources, or a quantum change means that U.S. Airways is becoming American Airlines, or vice versa, big versus small, and how, what the degree of organization of the type of change. Is it an over-organized type of change, or is it an under-organized type of plan change? And that depends on how much you put into it and what direction you want to go. Under-organized plan change, things just start to happen. You know, things are changing whether we want them to or not, and sometimes people over-organize a plan change effort, and that can either help or not. And other types of things that affect plan change, of course, would be whether it's domestic or international. So the critique of plan change. Change is not linear. People think it should just happen one piece after another, but when you're dealing with human behavior, as Peter Block mentioned, when you start dealing with human behavior, it's not rational. The relationship between change and performance is unclear, which means here we're going to make these changes at our workplace or in our unit, and that should make something happen differently in terms of human behavior. Maybe, maybe not. The practice of plan change, limited consulting skills and focus, quick fixes versus developmental approaches. In some cases, there is really not a lot of consulting that's necessary. In other cases, there is a lot of consulting that's necessary in terms of getting something planned and changed. So, quick fixes. Quick fixes don't exist as much as people wish they do. A lot of people have called me over the years and said, could you come in? We just need to fix this broken person, this broken process. And my answer is, well, quick fixes don't really exist in OD. They're usually something far more complex going on. So, second chapter here, or the third chapter actually, the organization development practitioner. This is about you. There are the learning objectives. So the roles and characteristics of an OD practitioner, competencies, internal versus external. Internal means salaried by the organization and who is an employee of the organization and has an office inside the organization. External OD practitioner will be somebody like me, who's independent, who has his own office, or some external practitioners form a consulting company, and you can work for an OD company, but you would still be considered an external practitioner by your clients. And then we want to understand the values and ethics guiding the practice of OD. So there's the internal and external consultants, as I mentioned, professionals from other disciplines who can apply OD practices. So OD practices can be taught to people like total quality management managers, information technology, information systems managers, and so on. And the competencies, this is the stuff that's not easy to develop. A lot of people think, well, I'll just be an OD guy or OD person, and they find out that their intrapersonal skills, intrapersonal means within you, noticing yourself. Self-awareness is something that's not necessarily easy to develop, and some people need to, and they don't have it, but it needs to be developed. Interpersonal skills is the ability that you have to work and get along with other people and other groups. General consultation skills, how to manage a consulting practice. There'll be more of that as we move through the course. And then obviously understanding OD theory, what it is. The role of OD professionals, you can be internal or external, as I mentioned. Marginality, the ability to straddle boundaries, and that means that you're going to take their clients into sometimes very uncomfortable or new territory, which then puts emotional demands on you and them. So emotional intelligence is something that's really important for an OD practitioner. And obviously the use of knowledge and experience. If you look at this chart for a minute, what you see is the more you spend some time with it, the shaded area, for example, the use of consultants' knowledge and experience, it says plans implementation, and you can see there's a lot of shaded area in the gray if you read from left to right. That means that there's a lot of use of the consultant's knowledge and experience. Then if you look down the left side, use of client's knowledge and experience, where it says refuses to become involved. That's a teeny tiny part of that gray section, which represents the client. So if you spend a little bit of time with that, you're noticing this is where the listen and reflect part is far more developed on the part of the consultant than it is on the client. But planning the implementation is far more developed on the part of the client than it is the consultant. So spend a little bit of time, and I think you get an idea of what that is. And let's see, professional ethics, ethical guidelines, and dilemmas. Easy to misrepresent yourself, to misuse data, to be coerced or coerce others. You can read about these in the book. But values and goal conflicts. A lot of these kinds of ethical dilemmas do get OD professionals in trouble. There's a model that you can look at, values, goals, needs, and abilities, the role of the change agent, the role of the client system. All of these contribute to a process, and that's doing what you do, which can lead to either be conflicted or ambiguous about what you are doing or what others are doing. And what that role conflict and role ambiguity means is that the client doesn't understand what role you're in or what you're there to do or what they're there to do, and it gets very convoluted. And then you can see in the consequences block, misrepresentation. You're being misrepresented. You are misusing the data. You are coercing them. You have a values or goal conflict, or you're just not technically, you're just not there. You just don't get it. So that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that little walkthrough, and we'll see you in the threads. Take care.